Welcome to another edition of Fitness Friday Posi-TIPS with Rachelle, where Fitness Friday is always the best day of the week. Gotta love it, gotta love it, gotta love it. And folks, I'm actually wrapping up this current 4-part series here on the sales advantage. Now, because I'm doing a case study here later in this episode, this is historic because I never do these type of case studies, a modified case study I should say. I'm going to come back to sales again in a few weeks and probably be another episode or two because there's content that I would have covered in this episode that I'm not going to be covering, such as the sales process, sales ethics, and so want to make sure sales promotion, want to make sure to come back to that. But as I begin here it is. You all know it by heart now. You should. You definitely, if you hung with me long enough on these episodes, you should know it by heart. You should know it by heart. So the SWOT analysis, so strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And I wanted to kick off this episode here by highlighting something. Actually, like I said, I'm going to be covering sales promotion, in a few weeks. I'm actually going on spring hiatus after this episode, so you'll see some different fitness faces and different fitness content I'll be dropping in. And so yes, spring hiatus. Folks, you may as well be watching. Fitness Friday Posi-TIPS may as well be on cable TV because I do it like the pros. I was on holiday hiatus and I'm going on spring hiatus, and so yes, I look forward to taking a little rest here. And so, but this example here of sales promotion, so it ties into, I'm always tying things back to competitive analysis, knowing what's going on in your market, being able to identify opportunities and threats in particular, because again, those are external. And so this is not an endorsement of this particular orthodontics practice. I've never been there. Anyway, we get these direct mail pieces that come in the mail. But why I wanted to highlight this, while I don't endorse this particular orthodontics practice because I have no familiarity with them. What I do endorse is this promotional offer. Again, we talk about sales promotion, getting people to act with urgency, creating a sense of urgency, getting people to act sooner rather than later, driving incremental sales, incremental volume, in this particular case, incremental patient revenue that this particular practice wouldn't get otherwise without running this promotion. So I'm going to get more into sales promotion here later when I come back to sales, but had to highlight this. And so retailers, and it was interesting to see this orthodontics practice, the stimulus payments, the recovery, COVID recovery, the most recent COVID recovery plan, actually all three of them, have represented, a lot of people, a lot of Americans got payments of varying amounts depending on family size and all of that. And so from a consumer spending standpoint, it has represented opportunities, everything from retailers, people buying cars, and anyway, just an opportunity is there. And so this particular practice, what they have here is this promotional offer that says match your stimulus down payment. So you see this here, $1,400 down equals $2,800 down. New patients only. So again, trying to get new patients in. One per family, offer cannot be combined with any other discounts, expires 5/31/2021. So what is this here? So we know, the full payment for adults with this most recent COVID payment, $1,400. And so what they are essentially doing here, just a compelling sales promotion. So we talk about sales promotion in a few weeks. I mean, you really, from a post-promotional standpoint, if you want to generate some incremental volume, some new member signups, you got to bring it. You got to bring it from a sales promotion standpoint. But this is just an example of whether they, hired a marketing firm or somebody within the practice suggested that idea, or, another practice was doing it, whatever the case may be. They recognize the opportunity that a whole lot of millions and millions and millions of Americans with extra money now as a result of these most recent stimulus payments. So do you have a strategy? I mean, how has the stimulus payments, the COVID recovery bill, those direct payments, has that impacted your strategy? Has that impacted your sales strategy, messaging strategy? What type of impacts have you had? I'll let you answer that. And so moving right along, last week, now I had to highlight this because last week you heard me say from a competitive strategy, from a competitive analysis standpoint, I told you that LG Samsung and Apple, from a smartphone standpoint, have been obsessed with one another. And so, I mean, that's true everything from Walmart to Amazon, just these major retailers, just utilizing them as an example, but this occurs in various industries. But the top players are typically do a lot of competitive analysis, competitive studies, evaluating what is going on, what their competitors are doing. And so I can get into a very deep, detailed discussion on that, but I won't do that on this episode. But wanted to highlight you here. So remember, so we got the three major players from smartphones here. And so two of those three, I'm sure, are now doing the happy dance. Why? Because on Monday, April 5th, Michelle Toe of CNN Business published an article on CNN.com entitled, LG was a smartphone pioneer. Now it's quitting the business. So what are the implications of that? So Samsung, Apple, who are obviously competitors, and LG was certainly been a very big competitive threat. Now all of a sudden they're exiting the smartphones market. So I'll let you read that article. Very fascinating, but it goes on to say, LG is getting out of the incredible competitive business of making smartphones. The division is expected to be wound down by July 31st, so it's happening pretty soon. Although the company may continue to sell some of its existing models after that, according to LG Electronics. The strategic decision to exit the incredibly competitive mobile phone sector will enable the company to focus resources in growth areas such as electric vehicle components, connected devices, smart homes, robotics, artificial intelligence, and business-to-business solutions, the company said in a statement. So that's all I'm going to read on that particular, example. But see, once again, evaluating what your competitors are doing. And so if you're Samsung, that's also operating on that same, with the same operating system, the Android system, you were really just doing a happy dance and just determining what strategies you are going to use now to capture some of these previous LG customers. So anyway, just had to highlight that. Very, very interesting. I want to highlight another example before I move on in here to some more sales advantage conversations, but this is sales related as well. So I also said last week just what a challenge the sales profession is and how it's just very difficult because dealing with constant issues. And so I want to highlight an article here that appeared in the Detroit Free Press on the date of this is April 2nd. Phoebe Wall-Howard published this. The article is entitled, I'm not going to read all of this one either in the interest of time, Michigan-based auto dealer caught not paying minimum wage to sales team. I wish I could say, unfortunately, that this unfortunate example is rare, but this kind of stuff happens all the time in various industries. That's why I'm saying, the sales is just a very complicated field where you've got situations where people aren't getting paid and they're not getting paid adequately, and it's just very, very rough. So just a couple of highlights here. Ziegler Auto Group, which has a presence in 3 states with headquarters in Kalamazoo, has been ordered to pay 214 employees a total of $85,111 in minimum wages and overtime, back wages, following an investigation by the U.S. Department of Labor. Federal investigators determined that the auto dealer failed to ensure its commission-based sales consultants earned a $7.25 federal minimum wage at 13 Michigan, Indiana, and Illinois locations. Sites with violations included Ford, Mercedes-Benz, and Infiniti dealerships. Investigators noted violations involving 80 sales consultants, specifically at 10 locations. In Michigan, and they go on to name all of those various different dealership locations. I'm not reading all of them in the interest of time. The other 134 employees who did not receive wages for which they were entitled held different jobs than sales, the department said. Employees paid on commission basis must earn at least the federal minimum wage per hour of work completed. If they do not, employers must make up the difference, said Mary O'Rourke, Wage and Hour Division District Director in Grand Rapids. So you have a situation here, salespeople, just and so that's why I always say, from an HR standpoint, you treat people right, because when you don't, oftentimes the word gets out, And now this is a situation where the U.S. Department of Labor is involved, and this whole situation is going to be rectified, but just the negative publicity. And sales as a profession, like I said, is very vulnerable to these type of scenarios because you got commission-only type roles in various entities, and so unfortunately these type of things happen. But I just had to share that with you because you always want to do the right thing. You always want to do the right thing, folks. So shifting gears, also last week want to make sure to create some continuum here in this discussion that I have here on the sales advantage. So last week talked about prospecting, how that is just a fundamental role for salespeople. You know, in the absence of people giving you leads, they're just, hey, here are these people, call these people, these are qualified leads, these are unqualified leads. Part of the challenge of sales and a sales career, it certainly includes that prospecting factor. Going out, and for lack of a better way of saying it, but it's used all the time in the vernacular, drumming up business. Going out and drumming up business, or certainly that could be done, you know, from inside sales where they're making outbound prospecting calls and things like that. So very, very challenging, aspect of sales roles. So it's done, as I alluded to, email, text, in person, phone. There's just various different ways prospecting is done. So you want to pay attention to your prospecting efforts. What are you doing to stand out? What are you doing to make an impression? What are you doing to convey the value that your particular facility or facilities have to offer? Because prospecting, in many cases, you can lose a person. I mean, you know, it's just if it's the prospecting communications, particularly the initial prospecting communication, is off base, you can potentially lose that person, you know, for good. And I certainly, you know, during my journey, as I'm about to come up on 27 years of my fitness journey here on May 17th coming up, I definitely have to say that in terms of prospecting communications from facilities directed towards me, you know, I have to give the edge, I mean, pun intended, I have to give the edge to Eric Gordon at Edge Fitness Clubs, who sent me a prospecting email. I remember it was the day I got back from Louisiana in October. I think that came like the 27th of October, but just an excellent prospecting email. And that's when I'll be highlighting, you know, in sales training and those type of things for a very long time. But just the power of prospecting, of what can you do to get someone's attention in a message? How do you communicate? So the prospecting piece is key. Also, I discussed rejection and how difficult rejection is, and how that too. I mean, if there's one thing, I don't care where you're selling, what you're selling, how long you've been selling, who your target audience is. Rejection comes with the territory in a sales career. I mean, there's no way of getting around that. People are not always going to buy. People are not always going to be interested. People are always not going to have time. But just that fear of rejection, and I spent a lot of time last week talking about that, as a hidden obstacle, because it is really big. It's a very, very big obstacle. It's something I see when interacting with various salespeople in various industries. But, you know, how does a fear of rejection look? Even just in person, if you're doing an in-person interaction with somebody that's selling you something or trying to sell something. So instead of just a confident, forceful close, that person will say something like, well, let me know. The salesperson will say something like, well, let me know if you need something else, or here's my card. If you have any other questions, give me a call. There will never be a close. They'll never ask for the business. They'll never ask me to do anything. There's never a call to action, because why? That call to reaction is what can or cannot result in rejection. And if somebody fears rejection, they're going to have a very difficult time with a close, closing and asking for the business in this particular realm of fitness, asking the person to join, asking the person to upgrade. Also, you know, now obviously we're in spring, so weather is certainly much warmer here in northern climates. And as I've stated in previous years on previous episodes, the media is always clamoring, whether you're talking about print media, broadcast media, they're always clamoring for fitness content, because why? That's just such a big goal for people. You know, as I've quoted a number of times over the years, the Centers for Disease Control, the CDC, states, you know, 2/3 of adults in this country are overweight or obese. So the opportunity is there. And so there's always that need of people wanting to get fit or live a healthier lifestyle, and especially now with this COVID situation that we're dealing with, health and wellness and fitness is certainly, top of mind and paramount for a lot of different places. So, but even the ability to reach out to a news station and pitch your facility and say, hey, we have this great training, we have this great training staff. Would you be interested in coming on out to our club and doing a live feed here with one of our trainers, and he or she can really talk you through some different tips or something on working out and fitness from a personal training perspective, or a group fitness instructor, or whatever the case may be. Like now is a wonderful time. I don't care where you are in the country, but it's year round, truly, where they're always looking for that fitness content that's going to be able to help their readers, help their viewers, and they want to add value in that regard. But that fear of rejection will keep people from reaching out, even when there's a definite interest among the media to really help readers and folks gain a competitive edge, not even a competitive edge, but just solidify this aspect of their life from a health and fitness and wellness standpoint. So that rejection piece is huge. I did not want to cover that, cover much more on the rejection front, because that's just such a tough topic. And as I alluded to last week, I did not want to end on a Debbie Downer note. It's like rejection, like, oh goodness. But I will drop this in here really quickly, because as it certainly deals with rejection. And so since 2018 now, I've been making sure to highlight this particular point. Sometimes on leadership episodes, sometimes on HR related episodes, but I always mention it 3 or 4 times a year at least. And I'm behind, so we're already in second quarter and I've not mentioned it yet. But now within the framework of rejection, I want to give a couple of tidbits of wisdom before I move on here to the case study. A couple of different case studies, but one, of course, is one that I developed. And that is, when you watch these episodes, I'm so glad to have you. I mean, just thank you so much for your support. It's great. It means a lot. Like I said, it's very important to me to be of service. And then there's 2 goals that I have for Fitness Fridays. Number 1, telling the truth. Number 2, helping people. But helping people also means sometimes telling the hard truth. And so within the framework of rejection, so there's a couple of different things, particularly for those in senior roles who watch Fitness Fridays. And you watch this and you get inspired and which is a wonderful thing. You get inspired and you're like, oh man, we need to do this, we need to do that, we need to change this, we need to change that. And I just want to encourage you to make changes slowly, systematically, because that can be disruptive. Number of changes, simultaneous changes, all at once, all of this and that can be very disruptive. If people, if staff are not used to that, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh my goodness, and what happened to this? What happened to my boss? Or what happened to so and so? All of a sudden, so much has changed. We got to do this, we got to do that. Particularly again, if you haven't had a culture, if you had a laid back culture in your facility or whatever the case may be, and then all of a sudden we got to do this, we got to do that, we got to change this, we got to change that. That is just highly disruptive. And I'm telling you this, obviously, as a trainer, as a T&D, training and development professional, and you have to just do things slowly and systematically, and just kind of explain the logic, because human nature sometimes can want to say, well, at least think to yourselves. You may be thinking to yourself, well, you know what? Particularly those who are prone to make a lot of changes, or say mentally inside, you won't necessarily communicate this to people, but you'll be thinking, and I've been watching this lady on Fitness Friday, Posi-TIPS, and we need to make some changes. Some people do actually kind of verbalize that, not just of course in this Fitness Friday framework, but just in the workplace or wherever the case may be. I've been watching this lady on Fitness Friday, and we need to make some changes around here. I have not been holding people accountable. I want my SWOT analysis every week. I want a marketplace analysis. I want this, I want that. Okay, we need to, we got to make all these changes. And so just be careful. That's all I'm saying, because from an employee retention standpoint, that can be highly disruptive. And I do not want you to lose people. That is a blind spot. I mean, like I said, we all have different blind spots. We all have different challenges and areas that we just really need to be cognizant of. That is one of them. And number 2, and this is a leadership pitfall as well. And we've all made this mistake in some area of life with some person or people, many people in some cases. And I know I'll be the first one to raise my hand because I've made it, because, you know, I'm a helper by nature. I'm a leader, I'm a trainer, I'm a developer. So this is a very big one for me. Historically has been a very big one for me. And that is, in this framework, telling, particularly, again, this is more directly like club leaders, you know, telling your staff to watch Fitness Friday, or making your staff watch Fitness Friday Posi-TIPS with Rachelle. Once again, that is highly disruptive because, you know, from a training standpoint, the challenge with that is I'm not a member of your chain of command. You know, I'm using the military example, some of my background and growing up and stuff, but I'm not a part of your chain of command. So that can be, that can create a barrier, and that can just create some issues there. And so it's wonderful to get inspiration, to you know, and there's people, you know, I would say club leader or general manager and above, you know, those type of folks. And actually Fitness Friday, because it's so leadership focused, that is probably predominant focus in terms of target audience of Fitness Friday Posi-TIPS with Rachelle. So people below that, you know, particularly if they didn't ask for, you know, oh, I want to reach the next level and I want to do this, or I'm looking for some leadership and management development. You know, if people didn't ask for that and you're making them do that, it's just highly disruptive, and just, not to sound like Debbie Downer, but if you think you're going to make, particularly, like I said, just club employees, general managers, talking to you for a quick minute. If you think you're going to make employees watch Fitness Friday Posi-TIPS and not going to have some of them, at least over time, head for the hills and reject you, reject your gym and move on to another place of employment, regardless of how passionate they are about fitness, how wonderful of an employee they are, that is just a challenge. That is a very big challenge. And on previous episodes, I go into more detail about why that is and what are some of the specific pitfalls of doing that. But so I haven't mentioned it this year, and I'm going to get to a HR episode, and I'll do a specific one on employee retention, because I haven't talked about that in a long time, probably since the year before last. So gonna cover that, gonna come back to it in more detail, but I just had to let you know, just not to sound like Debbie Downer, but it's like, you think you're not gonna have employees, run for the hills. When you do that, it's like, get ready for them to leave. Like Debbie Downer. But just had to share that, folks. So moving on to a modified case study. And so what I have here is what I've decided to do, because, you know, one of my taglines here on Fitness Friday Posi-TIPS with Rachelle is, I'm generous with my expertise, but I'm not crazy. So I decided to look at two fitness entities here in our Metro Detroit area. Two mature franchises. This is not a comprehensive, competitive strategy or competitive analysis of the Metro Detroit market. That is time consuming and very expensive. Which Fitness Friday Posi-TIPS, that's just not, that's just this concept, or these episodes are not geared towards that. It's a whole separate, consulting situation. But there's helpful information even within this modified case study. And say modified case study because there's case studies are tend to be very, very comprehensive, a lot of information, a lot of different, angles of covering something. And so what I'm looking at specifically, and in the interest of time, I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because I want to close this episode out by highlighting yet another example that I've highlighted weeks ago, and that is 24-Hour Fitness, which has emerged from bankruptcy, and they've made some changes, particularly around the arena of sales. And I told you weeks ago that I was going to come back to that. And I want to make sure to cover that because there's some good insight, some very good insight in terms of what they've done for sales. And so the two entities that I'm going to cover in this particular episode are Powerhouse Gym of Novi and Planet Fitness number 2, also of Novi. So, like I said, two very mature franchises, been around a very long time, and just so from a competitive standpoint, it's just it's easier to do that. But also, full disclosure for those people who don't know, I actually have a history as a member of both clubs, so it made this very easy and very quick. And I wanted to create something to help people. Regardless of what type of entity that you're in, there's a lot of leadership stuff certainly within this, and but I wanted to be able to help people while also just providing some good insight, as a means to do that. So covering those two, I was a member of Powerhouse Gym for 5 years here in Novi. Was a member of initially Planet Fitness Novi location number 1 for 6 months, and then I transferred to the Commerce location. Both Commerce is a suburb north of me, so was there a member of Planet for more than 3 years. So really about 3 years and 3 months almost. So have a history with both. I know a lot of both. And so in terms of history and things like that, just have a very good insight into both. So like I said, it made this process very easy. But also, it is helpful to know that both of these, from a competitive strategy standpoint, I mean, this is a clash of the champions here. This is a clash of the champions, which is just so interesting. And so what we have here, like I said, in the interest of time, I really got to get through all of this. So Powerhouse. The franchise, founded here in Metro Detroit, actually Highland Park, Michigan, in 1974 by William and Norman Davish. So Norman passed away in 2005, so William, or Will as he's commonly known, has been running the show ever since. So it's very, very important to know that. So the history is very interesting, where that flagship, the initial location in Highland Park, the first location, started out with more of a boxing focus. So you'll hear things like Tommy Hitman Hearns, Mike Tyson. There's some heavy hitters. The pun, here we go with another pun. We got some heavy hitters from the boxing industry. Certainly there's a baseball analogy there as well. But so we got some heavy hitters from the boxing industry. So it's very important to evaluate. So there was a boxing and bodybuilding focus. So you think back in the 70s, very different arena, very different situation. So founded in 1974 and started franchising in 1984. So compare that or contrast that with Planet Fitness, where you had the Grandal brothers, Mike and Mark Grandal. And so they took over a struggling Gold's Gym location in Dover, New Hampshire in 1992. And they actually began franchising it in 2003. But the current CEO, Chris Rondeau, joined the two brothers back in 1994, and he led the change in terms of the name to Planet Fitness, and he still remains certainly there today. So from a leadership perspective, as I just said, Chris Rondeau, and so it's also important to note too, this is very important, is that he is very high profile. So he is a media darling in terms of fitness chains and the fitness industry, a lot of business cable networks. He gets a lot of press. And so it's just always important to kind of keep that in context. Where Powerhouse, which is family, it's a family-run, family-owned, private franchise. It's run by Henry Davish, the son of William Davish, the founder. And so we looked at some leadership implications. Want to look specifically here at the Novi fitness market. And I've said this on a number of episodes here over the last couple of years, certainly. We have a mature market. Yeah, we've got different suburbs, a lot of suburbs here in Metro Detroit, but as far as Novi is concerned, a mature fitness market that is saturated from a general fitness perspective. We have several large players here, and so it's saturated, and just the potential for new general fitness facilities coming in, it's certainly not going to be easy. And that's what I think I said sometime at some point latter part of last year, like, please don't come to Novi. If you're planning to come open a big gym, just please, there are other suburbs in this area that you want to look at, because there will be more potential there. And so that is something to point out. So the Novi City Council pre-COVID was evaluating the addition or the construction of a community-oriented fitness center. I'm actually not sure where that stands right now. I'm sure it's been put on hold, but they were doing a feasibility study to add another general fitness place, facility, which of course would be, family activities, a lot more community oriented. So that is a potential major threat to all of the major players in the area. So saturated market, a lot here. And so it's important to know the Planet Fitness number 2 that I'm referencing here in this case study was launched in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we know what a challenge just overall the fitness industry has been experiencing. So it's just important to note that that was when it was launched. And so as far as Powerhouse Gym and Novi, which was initially, and Paul Wright gets the credit for this, Fusion Fitness. And so Will Davish bought Fusion Fitness from Paul Wright in 2010. And so again, you've had Will owning that facility for a very long time now. And so we'll talk about some of the dynamics and implications of that, as I move on. So also some additional cultural in terms of facility itself, cultural differences. Powerhouse Novi is lax and laissez-faire, family owned. So that's very, very important to know when you contrast that with Planet Fitness is very compliance driven. I mean, we've got performance metrics, KPIs, key performance indicators for clubs, for staff. I mean, just a very compliance driven organization. So what you have here is two diametrically opposed types of cultures, literally folks within plus or minus a mile of one another. Maybe less than a mile. I haven't exactly calculated it yet, but very close in geographic proximity to one another. So very, very diametrically opposed, very close to one another. And so one thing I also pointed out, this had to be maybe 2018 or so, is that PF Michigan Group, which owns this second location here in Novi, they have their facilities, and I've been to a number of them all over Metro Detroit. The concept that I coined was comfortably compliant. So the challenge with compliant-driven organizations, number one, regardless of industry, you're going to have higher turnover because people don't like to feel, that rigidity of a compliance-driven environment can be a challenge for employees. And there's turnover. I don't care what it is, what industry we're talking about. But the success of PF Michigan Group, in my opinion, there's various factors and various reasons for that. But their facilities in terms of, not ringing that lunk alarm and just having more of a comfortable environment versus one that was very rigid within their facilities was why I coined that term comfortably compliant, or PF comfortably compliant. So from a competitive standpoint, when you have a facility like Powerhouse Novi that's very lax, people do whatever they want to do. I mean, that's where I was for 5 years. I can definitely attest to that. So there's that type of culture versus a comfortably compliant, where yes, we have policies, procedures that corporate is laid out for us, but also how can we adhere to those in a more comfortable manner where we're not as rigid and those type of things. So those are the cultural differences and considerations. So the flagship location. So Powerhouse Novi, so the initial Powerhouse location was, as I stated before, Highland Park. However, and it's important to note in the context of competitive analysis that Powerhouse Gym Novi is considered, and has been for a number of years, considered to be the flagship location. That's the flagship. He has invested a lot of money over the years in that particular location. Before he actually built his gym in Commerce Township, Michigan / West Bloomfield, Michigan. Before that club, he'd already done a lot of renovations, and then after that club did some more renovations. So a lot has been invested in that club. So that's been the flagship for a very long time, remains so. In my understanding, the Planet location for PF Michigan Group, the flagship, the initial location was the Livonia 7 Mile. That somebody told me that a couple years ago. I remember I was at a grand opening and someone mentioned that to me. We were talking about their different clubs. And so you think about overall, so we're going to go back to top level. So we're looking at various factors here. This would all be in one huge background section, but I have it kind of broken down to go quickly in the interest of time. So in terms of the business model, or operationally, I should say, differences. So you have Planet, which is a publicly traded organization that has a hybrid model of independent franchisees and company-owned stores versus contrast that to Powerhouse, which is a family-owned franchise, has locations, roughly about 300 across the world. And so it's a global franchise, privately owned with headquarters here in Metro Detroit. So you just got to realize there's some dynamics there, particularly with being publicly traded. All right, that means there's going to be a lot of information that they put out there, and all of this and that, and that's why Chris Rondo is out. He's interviewed he's been interviewed quite a number of times in various media outlets and entities about the fitness industry and Planet Fitness, just a very highly visible franchise. So it's important to note that. So going back down now to the target audiences for each location. So what we have here, so Planet Fitness, overall, corporate, and I've said this before on Fitness Right here in recent weeks, first-time gym goers and casual gym goers. So these are people, they're not going to be in there 5, 6 years. They have people that are in the advanced segment. So again, think for market segmentation, target markets, beginner, intermediate, and advanced for simplicity's sake. So they want a lot of that beginner segment. Why? Because inherently the market potential, the market share, market potential certainly is going to be much larger if you're targeting beginners and people that rarely come versus more advanced. And so that's that. And then Powerhouse, which is inclusive of all levels, all body types, and I actually have here from beginner to bodybuilders. From beginner to bodybuilders. When you walk into that particular location, particularly Novi, you're going to see pictures, bodybuilders, the owner, Will, his brother Norman, Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, just all these different pictures of bodybuilders and all of that. So just that is part of the foundation of that particular franchise. So leadership, local leadership considerations, so Planet Fitness, this trio is one of the top franchise groups in the country. So not just within the fitness industry, but they own at least, my last count, 50 locations of Planet Fitness within Michigan and Ohio. So regardless of what industry we're talking about, owning 50 franchises is remarkable. And so that's something to certainly to always, from a competitive standpoint, you notice I keep talking about leadership, like who's running the show, who owns this, who's running the show, who's managing operations, all of that leadership piece is so important. Whereas Powerhouse, you have the franchise founder based here in Metro Detroit. And it's important to know that you've got, Brian and Laura Reef based here in our Metro Detroit area, and then a third partner, WB Pete Hopkins, located in New Hampshire, the same state as Planet Fitness headquarters. So just a powerful trio. They've done a lot, highly visible, and I should also state from a influential standpoint, so from a point of influence, Brian Reef is very high profile. So in my opinion, and there's certainly he's received some press, and PF Michigan Group has gotten a lot of press. So they are, in my opinion, the most high profile in terms of fitness leaders, fitness facility leaders in the state of Michigan. But also, Brian Reef, being here, based here, has been quoted a lot, and he's chaired where when COVID last summer, when gyms were closing, he got a bunch of competitors together and is chaired that group or co-chaired that group where they're looking at negotiating rent and all of these different things. So just highly influential is what I'm saying. So very high profile franchise group, very high profile fitness leaders, but also Brian Reef certainly within that, locally based here. So that's always important to know. When the media is quoting people, when the media is highlighting facilities, who are they talking to? What are they doing? What are they saying? Why are they saying it? So that gives you a great idea in terms of the influence that a person has. All right, so marketing considerations, so important. Planet, Mary Scott, their marketing director, has been there a long time. Powerhouse, it is evident to me, whereas before they seem to have hired, I don't know if it's a marketing consultant, advertising agency, marketing firm, but I can tell there's definitely more of a focus since about 2019 on marketing and advertising. They have a tagline now, which is serious results period. So they've got a new tagline. They've done some different things from a marketing standpoint. So it's always important to know that. I mean, it's very high profile. You're competing with Planet Fitness or PF Michigan Group, just high profile franchise overall because they do so much advertising, but also PF Michigan Group in particular, because you got to think from the media standpoint, and I don't want to say this to dissuade anyone, because I don't care if you own one location or you just opened up 3 weeks ago. Don't be afraid to reach out to the media and say, hey, we have a trainer we want to highlight, we've got some health tips we got for you. But, when you look at someone that owns 50 locations, I don't care if you're talking about KFC or you're talking about, whatever it is that you're talking about, that is just, from a media standpoint, that just the economies of scale of owning that many locations lends credibility just right away. Because if you only got so many, areas that you can cover potentially fitness within your newspaper or broadcast, do you talk to the person with 50 clubs or do you talk to the person with 5? But if you're the person that owns 5, don't hesitate still. But I just want to provide some context of just what that high profile means ultimately in terms of coverage results. So I've covered some local considerations very quick. There's a whole lot more that I'm not getting into, some local leadership considerations, some top level leadership considerations, some market considerations. There's a lot more that I can't get into in the interest of time. What I want to do is highlight now the Planet recommendations. So Planet and Powerhouse. So from a consulting standpoint, based on a lot of things I know, market dynamics, all of this and that, from a competitive strategy standpoint, what are the recommendations that I have? And so while these are very particular to these two entities, you're going to be able to there'll be insight for you as well. And so for Planet Novi, competitive analysis, competitive strategy situation with a major competitor. Like these two, the clash of the champions, in my opinion, because this level of, these two very strong situations from leadership, from ownership, from corporate, it's just a very interesting dynamic, competitive dynamic here, which is fascinating to me personally. And so it's competitive, but I would argue it's very good for both of them. It's very good when you're up against a very, very strong player, and it's just very good because that really tests you. It tests your leadership. It tests a lot of different things. And I personally always think that is good for all of us. And so from a Planet Fitness perspective or Planet Novi, highlight from a strategy standpoint, highlight 2,000 plus club locations with Black Card membership. And so I have sales strategy versus single club membership. So the advantage, again, we go back to the opportunities and all of this and that. So Planet has more than 2,000 locations. Powerhouse has 300 across the globe. So just inherently the number of locations, Planet has the advantage there. But also from a sales strategy standpoint, highlight that Black Card membership would get you, which is a second tier membership, which gives you access to all of those different locations versus a person that comes in and says, I want the $10 membership with just this one club, this one location. So you always want to try to highlight, an upsell, right? We talked about that last week, the power of upselling. All right, next, we want to leverage PF Michigan Group industry leadership. So again, with all those 50 locations in Michigan and Ohio, in my opinion, approach the governor's office about starting, like a fitness facility, fitness industry council. Yes, last summer, they started that particular group where they're looking at, again, bringing fitness entities and fitness facilities together about negotiating rent and all of these different, that were very business and industry specific, but this could be an opportunity to impact the citizenry of the state of Michigan and potentially Ohio, or certainly both. All right, because these governors, they're this COVID situation is the ability to come together and say, hey, we want to spearhead some health, some wellness, some fitness type of initiatives in the state. How can we partner with you to do that? How can we partner with you to do that? And because they are so high profile here within the state of Michigan, I absolutely would recommend that. Absolutely would recommend that. And also because of the way they professionally responded to the gym shutdowns and just the media coverage around that, some of the publicity around that, some of the media coverage around that. PF Michigan Group responded well to that. And so again, in terms of being on the, in good graces potentially, with moving forward with an initiative like that versus if there was more of an adversarial type of situation, that wouldn't be an option. So that's an option. And also take a step further. Also, hey, I think you should write a letter to Joe Biden's, President Biden's, office of the president, Vice President Harris, and say, hey, this is what I propose. This is what I want to do. We can do this on a national scale. All right, folks. So see, these type of things, and this is going to be just my personality, just kind of, aggressively pursuing these opportunities, because a lot of people aren't doing it. A lot of people aren't doing it. And if you have your profile is high enough and you have the background and experience, people will give you a chance. They will consider you right off the bat, which is that credibility. So the citizenry, there's an opportunity, whether locally, the state level, or nationally, to be able to impact the citizenry post-COVID-19, because we realize how important health, wellness, and fitness, certainly the COVID-19 pandemic has reminded us of that. Next, continue to sponsor and partner. So PF Michigan Group has sponsored or partnered with all 4 professional sports teams in Detroit. And so just the Tigers, for example. So the Tigers, and so you have them playing different teams, and they're seeing, any signage or anything like that with Planet. So that means other people and fans in other cities and potentially around the globe. You have expats, you have, all types of things where the impact of that is certainly not just felt here in Metro Detroit, not just felt here in Michigan, not just felt here in our region, because we got, MLB teams across the country. And so that is an opportunity, to continue to do that, obviously not, just with the impact of that immediately with this COVID situation, moving forward, possibly Q4 into 2022, 2023, look at doing that, look at continuing that, but that is not just beneficial to PF Michigan Group or the other Planet franchisees here in the state of Michigan. That is across the industry, because once again, Planet does a ton of advertising. They've got the budget to do all these type of things, and the average gym, owner just made, certainly those marketing budgets are not going to be that extensive, not going to have that type of marketing fund and advertising fund that all these franchisees are putting in together. So, but the industry benefits, all right, when you have one high profile player like that, because once again, you want people to come into your gym. They may initially have been thinking of Planet Fitness, but now they're thinking, okay, well, I want a pool, or I want group fitness classes, or whatever. And then your facility, hey, I want a spinning studio. That's the benefit. There's certainly some other ancillary awareness overall for the fitness industry that happens when they do all of that advertising. So wonderful in terms of exposure outside of the state of Michigan. Next, and this is an HR recommendation or human resources, transfer Westland, Michigan GM Karen Ryan to this location. So a temporary or permanent rotation. And so one thing that part of my rationale for recommending this is if you've never been a member of Planet, if you have, you'll see where I'm going with this. But Planet, because they had the no commitment type of, that was their part of their positioning for a long time, $10 a month, you just leave anytime, no commitment, yada, yada, yada. They've extended that, of course, to the Black Card membership, so they're totally, no commitment now. So there's a lot of instability within the Planet franchise in terms of member churn, in terms of employee churn. That's a whole different conversation I don't have time to get into. But Karen Ryan, and I actually met her at the grand opening of their Wayne, Michigan location. And so, I met her, and I was talking to different people, and I've talked about her on a number of episodes a couple years ago. But anyway, I think very highly of Karen Ryan. And she, part of our conversation when I was talking with her, she started out at the front desk, and then, now is a general manager at one of their 50 locations, but incredibly loyal. Has been, from a leadership perspective, developed within that system, within that Planet Fitness system, within the PF Michigan Group system, incredibly loyal. And so, in my opinion, yes, there may be other GMs, but I don't have time to get into all that, and I don't know them. I haven't had this type of conversation with all of them. But I think she would be a good fit in a situation where I think they need to pilot test creating more of a culture of stability. So you have all that instability with member churn, employee churn. You're going to need somebody in that role, with all due respect to who's ever there now, and that's a wonderful thing, and whatever. But even if it's just temporary, a year or two. But you need somebody that's going to be able to stabilize that environment. And one of the ways to do that is to have a long-term manager that's highly committed and highly loyal, that's going to buy into the whole concept of, hey, man, we've been churning members overall as a franchise, nationwide, but definitely, from an employee standpoint, and it's expensive to keep hiring people. It's expensive that member churn. All right, that's why those advertising budgets are so big, because they need the member volume. So, in my opinion, she would be a great fit to put into that role and say, hey, this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to establish a sea change here in terms of from instability to stability. And I think she'd be a good person to do that. And lastly, be patient. So I'm doing 5 recommendations of each. Be patient with the growth expectations of this club, because again, this club was launched in the midst of a pandemic. You're in as competitive. You're in a highly saturated suburb here, a highly saturated market from a fitness perspective. In a situation of the Battle of the Champions, Clash of the Champions, here with Powerhouse Gym and Novi. Just be patient. Plan it. They typically experience growth pretty quickly, but we are in the midst of a pandemic. You are in a highly saturated market, and you are competing with a major player. From a competitive strategy standpoint, literally less than a mile away. So those are those recommendations. And so with that, it's ramp up in Q4 and beyond. So again, looking at 2022, 2023, that's when you'll start to see, in my opinion, the traditional growth once everything kind of goes back to more of a sense of normalcy and people feeling comfortable with gyms. So next, Powerhouse Gym Novi recommendations. Number 1, and this is so important for everyone listening, do not try to go toe-to-toe with Planet from a marketing perspective. You will lose. And that's because, as I've alluded to a number of times, their advertising budget, the franchise, those franchisees contribute to that. Just don't do it. Don't do it. Let them spend that money to generate overall broad awareness. And then once you get some foot traffic, once people, because there's, like I said, there's all entities have the potential to get some of that, increased foot traffic and interest, because just that broad advertising, their broad marketing tactics can have the potential certainly to benefit numerous fitness entities. So please don't. You say, I want to compete with Planet, and I want to have my next year's budget. I have 3 clubs, and I want to spend $150,000 next year. And you just don't have, potential, in terms of your membership totals and what the actual market potential is. May not be able to support that, and then you'll end up in insolvency. So I'm just trying to give a word of warning. So don't do that. But what you can do is leverage the power of sales promotion. I'm going to talk more about that in a few weeks. But so what Powerhouse is already doing, they're giving out free t-shirts, new member signups. So we know historically Planet has done that. So again, from a competitive reaction standpoint, again, it's all about this competitive strategy. So now Powerhouse Gym has started doing that, free t-shirts. All right. Also develop an aggressive member acquisition and retention promotions, such as referrals. I'm not going to give you any specifics because, I'm not crazy. I'm generous, but I'm not crazy. But referral programs. What type of promotions can you do? Because just asking people, if you know someone, if you have a referral, let us know. There's got to be more than that. There's got to be a compelling offer. There's got to be more of a direct in terms of reaching out to members, asking them to do that, and just giving them something strong enough from a sales promotion standpoint to develop urgency, to encourage them to act, move them to action. That's the power of sales promotion, getting people to act with urgency, but it's got to be compelling, has to be compelling. Number 2, go on offense from a sales perspective on the inclusivity of Powerhouse Gym franchise culture versus the judgment-free zone and bodybuilder caricature pictures hanging around the gym. So Planet Fitness, you should go inside and tour one if you don't quite know what I'm talking about, but they're quote-unquote judgment-free zone, but they've got a lunk alarm, they've got caricatures, pictures with a bodybuilder with a big X and a circle, and so with that line through it, like no bodybuilders. And so just as a result of that, it's a very polarizing, very polarizing franchise. If you haven't realized that, you can read about that, you can learn about that. Why? Because many people have issues with rejection, and then you have the lunk alarm going off in public humiliation, and that leaves a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. Where that's happened to, or they've seen that happen to, you can watch videos on YouTube about it. But again, and that creates an opening. That creates an opening for your competitors or a competitor in this situation to say, hey, we're inclusive. You can be whoever you want to be. We welcome you. We have all body types in here. We have all body sizes. We have no caricatures of people on the wall or anything like that, depending on body size. So wanted to highlight that. That is a very, very big opportunity, certainly not just for Powerhouse Gym Novi, for any entity. You know, if you're all about inclusivity, and again, we're in an era now in this country where DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion is at the forefront of not only business, but politics. There's just a lot of different things. So you want to be as inclusive as possible. You don't want to reject people based on body type, body size, all of this and that, because you just open yourself up to just a lot of negativity and criticism. So that was that. Next, update business model to include multi-club access. So Powerhouse Gym does not have just chain-wide the reciprocal access amongst franchisees, and so that's just more of a challenging system. And from a competitive standpoint, you have all your major fitness chains doing that. You have the option to join at this location and have an up tier or upsell, a next tier or next couple tier memberships where you can go to all the different clubs. So you want to, from being founded years ago and then franchising, 74 and then franchising in 84, and then so much the market has changed. So much in consumer expectations, potential member expectations, current member expectations have changed to say, well, if you have multiple locations, how do I go to all locations? What type of membership is that? So that's an area. Next, leverage the power of industry relationships and influence. He's an icon. He's an icon within the fitness industry, former bodybuilder, co-founder of Powerhouse Gym. There's a lot that comes with that, just in terms of the people that he knows and the relationships that he has with some of these heavy hitters. And I learned this lesson, I remember, it had to be around the fall of 2016, where I did a Fitness Friday and I had watched the documentary Pumping Iron, and I was talking about Lou Ferrigno and yada, yada, yada. And tell me that next week, Lou Ferrigno was not in that gym. And if you can go back to, it should be still on their Facebook page years ago, but those are the type of relationships where you can get Lou Ferrigno on the phone and say, hey, need you here, want you in the club, do a little, meet and greet for people. But he has those type of relationships and they can be leveraged. Lastly, hire a strong, no-nonsense outsider for an executive leadership position. So this is true of, family-owned businesses, and there's always, from a leadership perspective, to have somebody outside that can really kind of tell truth and speak difficult things at times. And I know he was a faithful viewer here of Fitness Friday Posi-TIPS when I was a member. And I'm sure, when I left that job and I left that club and joined Planet, he may have thought his source of inspiration and, just making positive changes in the club was leaving. But it's really like it's like his truth teller was leaving. Because there's one thing, Fitness Friday, I'm going to tell the truth and I'm going to help people. And higher up you go in leadership, the higher the likelihood of people telling you what you want to hear. And this is true within all types of workplaces. We've all been there. We've all been there in the workplace where you tell your boss what you don't want to hear because you don't want to deal with the conflict. Many people don't want to lose their jobs, so you have to just recognize the higher you go up in leadership, the less likely people are to tell you the truth. They want to tell you what you want to hear because they don't want to create any conflict, and more importantly, they don't want to lose their jobs. So those are some very quick recommendations. There's a lot more recommendations I could have included, but in the interest of time, didn't want to do all of that. So wanted to highlight that, and I want to close this episode out here by going back to this example of 24-hour fitness. So as I stated earlier on in the episode, so Pamela Kufal, content director, I've highlighted this a number of weeks ago, Club Industry magazine, so clubindustry.com. Title is 24-Hour Fitness Eyes a New Future After Reorganization. So 2020 was a long year. Not going to read all of this because I read a lot of it before. 2020 was a long year for 24-Hour Fitness CEO Tony Huber and his team. Not only were they dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic and the resulting mandates to temporarily close health clubs, but in June, the company was forced to enter Chapter 11 reorganization. It was a leadership and management challenge that has got to be pretty unprecedented in time, Uber told Club Industry during a phone interview in January. So skipping that because it deals more with the, bankruptcy filings and all of that. Just want to go on to the sales part here. And so, as part of the shutdowns, the furloughs, and the Chapter 11, the team reallocated positions between departments, adding talent and capabilities in certain areas while eliminating positions in others. Inside the clubs, they changed operations, revising job descriptions, compensation plans, and organizational structures. Much of that reorganization was in the area of sales. Prior to Uber joining 24-Hour Fitness, the company had begun implementing a new club membership process that virtually eliminated sales staff based on research that indicated people dislike a hard sell. The overall effort, called EVO, wasn't well implemented and resulted in membership decreases. Uber said, although he declined to share how much of a decrease the company experienced. Now the company has reinvented its approach and crafted roles for club sales and service experts in recognition of the dual responsibility of engaging and enrolling members while ensuring member needs are met. Senior sales and service experts work with sales and service associates, and compensation plans offer incentives for club teamwork. The focus of the new sales process is to meet customers where they are and sell to them the way they want to be sold rather than how the company wanted to sell them. At the end of the day, what we're doing is advocating for the importance of fitness. Digress here really quickly. What did I say? Regardless of what your role is in the fitness industry, whether I'm sitting here on a Fitness Friday Posi-TIPS or there's an account manager in a club, we are promoting fitness. That is the first thing before anything else. Fitness is fitness, fitness, fitness. Going back, Uber said. And we want people to be successful in their fitness journey as opposed to just selling the membership that they may or may not even use. It is still early in the implementation process, but the performance has exceeded Uber's expectations in the markets where clubs have been able to remain open. So that's all I want to cover on that, just in terms of that reading. But so they tried to model the kiosk model, and it was not successful. So when you think about that, so they said, which is true in any area of sales, regardless, we all have nightmare stories of dealing with salespeople, don't we? Yes, we all do. So, but what do people genuinely dislike when it comes to this hard, pushy, controlling, manipulative salesperson? I mean, we all have examples of that. And so in the industry, in the fitness industry, fitness facilities, clubs are no exception to that. You can look at various clubs across the country, particularly on the commercial side, again, where there's a strong profit motive, and see club after club after club, with just this, I felt manipulated, they weren't honest with me, they lied to me, and this kind of stuff, these type of complaints, you hear, again, all types of sales, where you're talking about car dealerships or whatever. Just this is one of the challenges, and I'm going to talk more about this in a few weeks when I come back to sales, is just sales ethics. How do we operate? So they tried this kiosk model, and the challenge with that is, while yes, people don't want to deal with a pushy salesperson, what they don't mind dealing with is a non-pushy salesperson. So one that is adding value, one that is listening, one that is not pushing them in a direction because they're trying to get a commission or they're trying to keep their job. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons they're not meeting their quota. So there's a lot of different reasons that result in that pressure, that sales pressure, folks, regardless of what salesperson or type that you're dealing with, where you are. That salesperson in terms of quotas tends to produce, in many cases, unfortunately, pressure on the customer or consumer. So they said, okay, people they don't want this hard sell in the fitness industry. We've had a lot of problems industry-wide with that. Let's try the kiosks. Let's try this kiosk model where they just go in and just do their own thing. But see, that eliminated the challenge, the opportunity for sales conversations in terms of upselling, in terms of listening and discovering needs. I talked earlier on in this series about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, of listening to people, see where they are, what they're looking for, how your facility, your chain, or whatever can meet those needs. So there's always going to be a need for salespeople. Yes, technology is wonderful, and this was an example of that, where the kiosk situation, from a revenue generation standpoint. So we're talking about revenue forecasting and all of that, new member acquisition. So when you give people a kiosk situation, will they choose the most expensive option? Will they upsell them? Will they go with the upsell option, or will they go with the very basic, least expensive? So think about that from a planning, forecasting standpoint. It's tough versus a salesperson that can have a conversation, have a dialogue, and encourage that person to upsell, resulting in incremental revenues for the club that otherwise, if that person would have come in at a base membership, whatever, wouldn't have generated. So they made some changes. That's the biggest thing, is just recognizing the problem. Like our industry, the fitness industry, has a problem, and it's so true. Whether it's pushy salespeople and people feeling manipulated during sign up, but also cancellations, where people are having problems canceling memberships. We're going to get more into that in a few weeks when I talk about sales ethics, because that's true of anything, anywhere you're trying to cancel or leave. But just the fitness industry has had so many problems in this area. And so from a sales standpoint, I would be remiss not to highlight the fact that we need to be people of integrity. We need to treat people right. We need to listen. We can't make it all about the quotas. We can't make it all about getting our way and getting the most money from someone. We got to come from the mindset of doing what's best for the customer, because that's how you keep people. That's how yes, it's one thing to have new member acquisition and get a new member, but you want to keep people. You want to keep people, but they recognize some changes need to be made. There's an emphasis, as that article alluded to, not just on member acquisition, but member retention. And so that's why they have more of a focus on that. And I've highlighted, just as an example before, Lifetime Fitness, which has historically had member engagement managers. Okay, they have a team for that. Not just the account managers, but they have the member engagement team. Why? To listen when there's problems and there's, you can't get a hold of an account manager or whatever. That's an extra layer of effort in terms of retaining members. But without having a formal member engagement team, your account managers or whomever, as this article alluded to, club teamwork, where everyone recognizing that getting new members is wonderful, but keeping the members is even better, because, like I said, member churn, that is very expensive to keep replacing members. And so I always want you to have the best financial success and just have the strong bottom line. And that current replacing members and employees is expensive, and you deserve better than that, and you can have better than that. So just take a look at what you're doing from a sales perspective. Recognize that, again, there's going to be a need for salespeople. Some of the modalities and some of the technologies and how the sales conversations are being had are certainly changing and have evolved over the years, but just recognize there's an opportunity for good, knowledgeable, honest, sincere, passionate salespeople in any industry. So folks, that is all I have for you today. This series has been such a blast. I'm going to come back to it, like I said, again, when I come back from hiatus. And it's going to be a lot of fun. I've slotted it. It's going to be the third episode after I return from hiatus. So we'll come back to that. But this has been cool. Hope it's been cool for you folks. But until I come back from hiatus, I've got some great content lined up for you in my absence in terms of filming, seeing my face every week. And but until then, remember, I am positively passionate about your fitness, leadership, and yes, sales. Make it a great day.